knowing the profound darkness of the industry. Hollywood and the industry is a very dark place. We've identified the architecture of the forces of darkness. We have in here the architecture, a graph of the architecture of the so-called Illuminati in hip-hop, the individuals who are in total control of the hip-hop industry, and have the first tier, Len Blavatnik, Edgar Brofman, David Geffen, Sumner Redstone, and so all of the labels, all of hip-hop, all of it, well, all of commercial hip-hop, I say that, all commercial hip-hop is in the hands of these people. Do you remember The Rape Over by Yasin Bey, Mos Def? One of the most powerful 60 to 90 seconds. Right? He lists the forces, Illuminati forces, if you will, in hip-hop. And there's one line in there, quasi-homosexuals running this rap shit. It's really running this rap shit now.
The Rape Over, Yasin Bey, that song 60 seconds or 90 seconds. The most loaded, revelatory. He exposes the industry. He ends it with quasi-homosexuals just running this rap shit. But after its initial release, the album, The New Danger, 50,000 units were printed without the song The Rape Over on it. The song The Rape Over was removed from the album. Why?
Mos Def was on Geffen Records. Which Geffen? David Geffen, head of the gay mafia. David Geffen, the head of the gay mafia, his fingerprint is all over hip-hop.
College Hip Hop says this, quote, David Geffen may not look like the usual hip-hop head, but the 72-year-old mogul is weaved into the fabric of the genre, for better or worse, depending on one's political viewpoint. From Huffington Post. Dirty hip-hop and whether blacks need to teach whites better. Quote, in addressing its misogyny problem, hip-hop will have to question one overlooked but unavoidable fact. Hip-hop is owned by whites. The most powerful man in hip-hop is not Puff Daddy, it is David Geffen. End quote. Who is this David Geffen? And what does he have to do with the quasi-homosexuals that run the rap game according to our brother Mos Def? He's very important. We're talking about the gay mafia. Michael Ovitz was the most powerful Hollywood agent for 20 years. He was called the Emperor of Hollywood. Michael Ovitz, the Emperor of Hollywood, met a humiliating demise at the hands of what he described as a shadowy Hollywood cabal, specifically what he said, the gay mafia. The gay mafia broke the Emperor of Hollywood, the most important most powerful Hollywood agent for 20 years. But he was broken by a gay mafia that was led by the other emperor of Hollywood. According to Michael Ovitz, David Geffen led, and both of them Jewish. David Geffen led a gay mafia. Such Hollywood powerfuls as Barry Diller, Sandy Galen, Calvin Klein, Steven Spielberg, Steve Tisch, and others. Michael Jackson in 2003. Michael Jackson, our beloved brother. He said, is reported by the same Vanity Fair, but also the New York Post, as stating that a gay mafia sank his career, and that gay mafia that sank his career was led by his former best friend, David Geffen. Geffen is the architect, having subtly refashioned the music and movie industry in his image. It is said that he has shaped the entertainment landscape more than any other individual, and therefore has shaped popular culture more than any other individual. He is described simply as the operator. David Geffen's Jewish friend, Bernard Weintraub, who is the Los Angeles correspondent for the New York Times and David Geffen's partner in crime in many ways, it has been alleged. He said of David Geffen, to understand how he's tagged the operator, how does David Geffen, the most powerful gay man in the country, how does he operate as the operator? His pal Bernard Weintraub wrote in the New York Times, quote, and David sort of sits there in the darkness, very quiet. You don't know what he's doing except controlling and manipulating. Sort of like the original cast album of My Fair Lady. That's David. What is this reference to the My Fair Lady that illustrates David Geffen? This is the image that is invoked to describe David Geffen as the operator. You see a man puppeteering another man who is puppeteering a woman. That's how David Geffen operates. He operates in the darkness, very quiet. You don't know what he's doing, but he is puppeteering people to achieve his agenda. And his agenda is literally, openly a gay agenda. Brother Jadina, when you say it is non-African to say or to reject homosexuality, what you are saying is that Mayat is non-African. You know what Mayat is? I'm pretty sure you do. The spiritual system that undergirded Egypt, ancient Egypt, or Kemet in its glory. The spiritual system at the root of the African greatness that raised those pyramids in Egypt. Maya is the quintessential African spiritual philosophy at the root of the African example of greatness that we all cite. Mayat is at the root of that in a law of Mayat, as we get it from the negative confession. See, In the meiotic system, the righteous man has to declare what he ain't guilty of. It's not a system of thou shalt not. It's a system of I have not. And this is why I deserve entry into the hereafter, the afterlife, the Godhood. This is why, and this is very important, because you mentioned, Brother Jadena, that only our God can help raise us to Godhood. So the raising to Godhood is very important to this question. And the whole system of ancient Egypt, the spiritual and educational system, was to raise man into God. One studied 42 years in Egypt in the educational system of Egypt, after the completion of which one reached his summum bonum, his greatest good, and became a god. So the purpose of spiritual education in ancient Egypt was to be raised to a god. And in order to gain entry into Godhood, one had to stand and confirm what we are not guilty of. And one thing that we have to confirm in order to raise ourselves to Godhood, Brother Jadena, we have to be able to confirm that we are not guilty of homosexuality, of being a man laying down with another man. Mayat and its path to black godhood requires that we are able to confirm that we're not homosexual. So what, dear brother, are you going to de-Africanize Maya? If the rejection of homosexuality is un-African, then Mayat's rejection of homosexuality means Mayat is not African? No, sir. So this example of Mayat raises 2 points. One, the quintessential, or 3 points. 3 points I want to highlight right now with this, with Mayat. One, Mayat adds a quintessential African spiritual educational tradition. Rejects homosexuality. A righteous man declares he has not engaged in homosexuality. Mayat requires that of all righteous men. The second point is that Mayat, as a spiritual tradition that leads to our raising to Godhood, this point clearly means that homosexuality sabotages the path to Godhood. Mayat declares that homosexuality is an impediment to the path of raising ourselves to Godhood. So if, Brother Jadena, you are an advocate of black people, African people, raising ourselves to Godhood, then you must reject homosexuality as an African practice, just as the African spiritual tradition of Mayat rejected homosexuality as a practice because it interfered with our raising ourselves to Godhood. The third thing this demonstrates is that at the time of ancient Egypt, there was already homosexuality in Africa.
the reason one would have to declare they are not guilty of a sin is because that sin existed. So does that then mean that Mayat is proof, or the so-called negative confessions are proof that the long sought for proof that homosexuality in Africa preceded all white contact? No, it don't. Because the Hyksos ruled, white folks ruled Africa or Egypt in northern Africa. In the Nile Valley area, white folks ruled at different periods over different periods of times, and in particular the Hyksos, who were proto-Jews. The Hyksos who ruled ancient Egypt in the 12th and 13th century BCE. These were proto-Jews, and they invaded Egypt and ruled Egypt, and these proto-Jews had a homosexual inclination. Yes, the Hyksos, the proto-Jews of the ancient world, they absolutely had a homosexual inclination. So if they gave expression to their homosexual inclinations in Judea, what would stop them from giving expression to their homosexual inclinations in Kemet? And so these people known for homosexuality, they were in ancient Egypt. And so I can see a consequence of that contact, still white contact, a consequence of that contact being homosexuality popping up among us. And so the gods, Mayat, had to declare, no, that exists, but that ain't righteous. That ain't Mayat. And by saying, dear brother Jadena, that ain't Mayat, that's saying that ain't African. I do not believe this is brother Jadena's gay agenda. I do believe he was representing a gay agenda on Sway's universe. I do. But the gay agenda preceded Jadena. The gay agenda in hip hop preceded Jadena. The gay agenda preceded Janelle Monáe. Because I see people mention his sister, our sister, Janelle Monáe. I am saying that we can actually trace the genealogy of the gay agenda that brother Jadena was representing on Sway's universe. I am saying we can trace the genealogy of that agenda. Jadena's boss is Rob Stringer, CEO of Sony Records. Janelle Monáe's boss she's with Atlantic. Ultimately, her boss is Craig Cowman and Julie Greenwald. It's very important. When we talk about Jadena and his role in the pushing of this gay agenda, when we talk about Jadena, we have to talk about Lil Nas X. We have to talk about Tyler, the Creator. We cannot see Jadena outside in this regard, in his advancing of the homosexual agenda or gay agenda. We cannot see Jadena in this matter separate from Lil Nas X or Tyler, the Creator. Why? Because Jadena, Lil Nas X, and Tyler the Creator, all of their bosses robbed Stringer. It's extremely important. The gay agenda in hip hop and the drug agenda in hip hop, they're both real, they both emanate from the same sources. The chemical assault, we are chemistry. Yes. I would venture to say 90% of what we are is chemistry. Not just our physical body and the operation of our physiology, but our mental processes ultimately is chemistry. And so the sorcerers of evil are always organic chemists. Because that's why it's not a question, it's a declaration. How to kill a god? Through chemistry.
We mentioned Leviathan. God will bring circumstances to our life that will disturb our emotions because the deep sea that Leviathan is lodged in represents our emotions. And if circumstances are rough enough to disturb our waters enough, get us emotional enough, that Leviathan will come up. But in God's design, the point of awakening each and every one of our Leviathan, the reason for bringing our monster out of us is so that we can kill the monster, not become the monster. But Satan is the ape of God. And Satan always inverts God's design. Did you know? These wicked scientists have created a chemical, the aim of which, when consumed, it helps us find our monster. The purpose being, once our monster is unleashed by the chemical, we become our monster. Did you know that? Slide, please. You know the chemical, though. You know the chemical well. We hear about it in damn near every song we listen to. Every rapper of some importance name drops that chemical. Whether we call it ecstasy, whether we call it Molly, that is the chemical that Jewish sorcerers created. MDMA, Molly, the Molly that has overtaken weed in hip-hop culture. That's the chemical that was artificially fabricated, slide please, by the Russian Jew, Alexander Shulgin. One more time, please. By the Russian Jew, organic chemist, master of the linguistic magic. Alexander Shulgin fabricated or synthesized the form of MDMA that is at the root of Molly culture. The drug that every rapper and his woman is popping, that's Alexander Shulgin's chemical, designed to bring out the monster in us that we may become the monster. And so, but look, before it was called Molly, before it was called ecstasy, you know what the Jewish sorcerers called it when they released it into the public? Slide, please. They called it Adam. Why? Not Adam, the first man, but Adam the androgynous or hermaphrodite. Because this drug was designed, he said, to androgynize its user. Adam. While cannabis was in fact created by God, it was, but manipulated by Satan, Molly is totally the fabrication of Satan. What is Molly? It's the linguistic magic of Jewish sorcerers used to master the original man. And this is why, slide please. Shout out to Kendrick Lamar. We have to cancel Molly rap. We're not going to cancel yet the Molly rappers. But from this point on, knowing now what is exposed of the origin and purpose of Molly, any rapper that name drops, anyone who promotes the popping of Molly, if you persist, you make yourself an enemy of your people. You make yourself a witting agent to the Jewish sorcerers in their attempt to master the original man. I was asked, Brother Dr. Wesley, do you believe gay people are born that way? I said, well, many probably are. But not because Allah made them that way, but because Satan is insistent on intervening in our lives' affairs in the womb of women, in particular the black woman. Satan absolutely is intervening, has scientifically mastered interfering with God's work in the womb of the woman. Context, I submit this very important document from 1987, and the year is important. From Psychological Bulletin, Dr. Lee Ellis and Dr. Ashley Ames, an article entitled Neurohormonal Functioning and Sexual Orientation. Why this article is so critically important to understand this new phenomenon of black homosexuality. With the confessions here, you and I can understand it for what it is: a spawn of the white man's science. And in this document, we have the science laid out. An important section in this document: experimental induction of sexual inversions in non-humans. Sexual inversion is transgendering. So, in this document, the science by which sexual inversions were produced in the laboratory and then moved out, what they call in vitro, in the lab, and then moved out in vivo, in real life, the science to doing this is laid out here. They say, and listen, it's 1987. In the past 30 years, a large array of sexual inversions have been experimentally induced in laboratory animals. In the last 30 years, that means since 1950, a large array of sexual inversions have been experimentally induced in laboratory animals. 5 basic methods for inducing sexual inversions of a neurological behavioral nature, inducing sexual inversion neurologically in the mind and behaviorally. So you don't only think you're a woman but a man, or think you're a man but are a woman, but you behave as a woman though you're a man. You behave as a man though you're a woman. 5 methods of scientifically inducing sexual inversion were mastered by 1987 and had been worked on since 1950. All aspects of mammal anatomy, physiology, and behavior can be sexually inverted. Most, if not all, of the methods for causing sexual inversion involve altering androgen and or other sex hormone levels, while the various parts of the body are sexually differentiating in the womb. Androgens. Androgens are the hormones that determine masculinity, as estrogen is a hormone that determines femininity. The main androgen is testosterone. 2 methods, or there are 5 methods of transgendering the world. 2 of them we want to highlight today. 1, a most insidious method that, to me, illustrates what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. You can't fathom the depth of Satan. One method that this document brags about mastering is weaponizing the mother's immune system against her male fetus. Immunity refers to the tendency of an organism's white blood cells to chemically attack foreign substances by building antibodies to those substances. You follow? These scientists accomplish tricking a mother's immune system into believing her male fetus's testosterone is a foreign substance, and a mother's immune system will produce antibodies to assault the testosterone of her male fetus. Do you hear what I'm saying to you? What I'm saying to you is never leave your baby alone with white folks. And we are seeing some of why they are so insistent on getting our babies from us. When this man can trick the mother's immune system to assault the masculinity of her men, and ain't nobody seeing nothing. So you take your baby home, and then after puberty, you see these changes, and you ask yourself, what did I do? Well, what we did was trusted our enemy with our baby. The second method, the chemical manipulation of sexuality through drugs. Listen to this confession. Several neurological or neurologically active drugs can block testosterone's effects. The feminists want us to believe, Brother Minister, that gender is purely a social construct, that male and female are artificial things, artificial categories. They wrong. The devil lie. Masculinity and femininity is anchored in biochemistry. Testosterone produces the masculine, the male brain. It masculinizes the brain. It masculinizes behavior. So let's go back to the confessions. Several neurologically active drugs can block testosterone's effects or otherwise interfere with the neuroorganizational actions of the sex hormones. Examples include such anti-androgens, androgens being the male hormone. Anti-androgens are drugs that prevent testosterone from doing what it do in the male body. You follow? Anti-androgens are testosterone blockers, drugs that act as testosterone blockers. Examples of such anti-androgens, drugs that keep testosterone from doing what it do. Some examples are Depo-Provera, the drug that the government's $400 million program to biomedically control black men. That drug, Depo-Provera, is an anti-androgen, and what does it do? These drugs alter the synthesis of androgens, the formation of androgen receptor sites, or the filling of androgen receptor sites in the brain. When they are administered to pregnant mothers, while the fetus's brain is being sexually organized, offspring are likely to have their post-pubertal sexual behavior affected. If a mother is administered Depo-Provera while she's pregnant, or, which is being encouraged, if while breastfeeding you surrender to the doctor's insistence that you go on birth control, and if you are breastfeeding while on birth control, the birth control, Depo-Provera, or the pill, we're going to talk about the pill, while you are on birth control while breastfeeding, it's feminizing your male child. But Depo-Provera, look what Depo-Provera does. The selected drug to biomedically control you and I. The best documented effect is the tendency for various anti-androgens to have feminizing and demasculinizing effects on the sexual behavior of male rats after the onset of puberty. For example, preventing and elevating the rear to other males, accompanying failure to mount females. Depo-Provera inspires homosexuality. It doesn't just feminize the biology, produce man boobs, or what they call. It doesn't just redistribute The fat on women targets the hip area. Fat in men targets the abdomen. Depo-Provera reverses that. So that's why you have a lot of men with big hips today. But it does more than feminize the physiology. It induces, as the minister said, the chemicals put a thought in the mind. Here is the fact. Here's the proof. The Depo-Provera that our government targeted you and I with actually chemically induces homosexuality in men. Do you follow? Now, going on, and this will be a difficult part of our discussion. Many drugs, they say, besides these anti-androgens such as Depo-Provera, many such drugs appear to at least partially divert or block masculinization of the nervous system during neuroorganization. Many drugs besides these have a partial demasculizing effect. The list includes barbiturates, which are drugs, yada, 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 marijuana. Uh-oh.